there was bits on the train where I was just bursting out laughing. Like, you know, they're in like a restaurant and they're like gorilla apes, like dressed in a little like red outfit with a little bellboy
and they're tipping him raisins.
Yeah.
The big one is in synthetic elements.
You're over tipping.
Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe.
So today we're doing Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, directed by J. Lee Thomas and starring Roddy McDowall as Caesar, the super intelligent talking ape that leads the ape revolution. So this was the fourth film in the series, of the original series. It's weirdly, when you look at like the Planet of the Apes films, obviously, like with most big franchises, the first one is the daddy. Like, that's the one everyone loves. Maybe the second one in these franchises, kind of like Rocky 2's, considered sort of not as good, but on a par in quality. And then there's a big fall off. With Planet of the Apes, it's a bit more up and down. Like, I don't know if have you seen the second one, Beneath the Planet of the Apes?
No, I didn't actually. I knew there was a series of films, but I didn't realise there was so many of them. Like, I kind of got put off with Planet of the Apes because I watched the newer ones. I didn't actually mind the first one, but I don't know, I just got a bit, disillusioned with it.
See, I really like the second one and the third one. I appreciate the fact that they did really try and do something different each time. But I know what you mean. There was something just a little bit missing from them. They didn't have that same magic of the old ones that you really couldn't recapture.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of did like watching these older ones because I preferred the actual apes as in like just costumes rather than like, because in the newer ones Caesar's like all CGI, isn't he? It just didn't have that same effect.
In terms of the makeup, the absolute best makeup ever of in the Planets of the Apes series is in probably the most hated one, the 2001 Tim Burton remake with Mark Wahlberg. A lot of bad things in that film. I don't hate it as nearly as much as you're supposed to. I feel like people really trashed that. It's probably because I saw it when I was a wee little kid. But the makeup and the prosthetics on the apes is just unbelievable. And there's virtually no CGI apes unless it goes for those big wide shots during the big battles, and there's tons of them on screen. But speaking of where they're ranked, generally, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes is ranked really low by most people. That was always the consensus. And I just never understood that. Because for me, this is, after the original, the best in the series, or my favourite in the series. There's something about it. It's just so different. I remember watching as a little kid on, I think, Channel 5 or Channel 4 in the front room where it was like the old box telly and the signal was starting to go bad because the TV was so old. And just watching this sort of communist era aesthetic of all the buildings and these 1950s style aesthetic of all the uniforms of the police and the authority figures, going around in this world where apes were what was clearly an ape man in an ape suit, but it just sold it for me. Like walking around enslaved, polishing people's shoes, being people's personal servants, going here and there, running in to collect books for them, being trained and, just being beaten in public. And it's just remarkable. And the handheld footage, which apparently the director was doing because he wanted the whole film to have a documentary feel. And in the original script, I think there was a lot more use of fake adverts or fake newsreels and things being broadcast, and it was supposed to have a slightly more, I think he was trying to incur kind of the 1984 radio show that Orson Welles did back in the day, like get into the audience head like this is really happening. But a lot of that fell to the wayside because this is the lowest budget of any Planet of the Apes films. It was tiny. I think it was barely under $1 million. But what did you think of those opening sequences where it's set in the scene?
The opening sequence were good. What I liked about this film in general, it's only like an hour and 20 minutes, and the opening sequences I think really did well to like set up what's going on in the film, because like they're all running about and you're like, oh, what's happening in this? And that particular scene where Caesar's asking questions, because Caesar's not, I assume this is the first time Caesar's seen what's going on, and he's quite sentient, isn't he? He can work out what's going on really quickly. But myself as a viewer, I was like, why are they all in these camps kind of thing? And then I love that scene where it sets up where they go to the little statue where there's like Rover and a little cat, and they're like, all the dogs and cats have died and now apes are pets. Because I was thinking, if that happened in real life, people would go mad. People love like household pets. They'd get something else. They'd have to get lizards or snakes.
It's monstrous.
Now you understand why I've kept you away.
It is a really interesting point, and I don't think it'd be lizards and snakes, but like you said, it would have to fill the gap, but it would have to be a mammal, because like lizards and snakes, certain people love them as pets, but there's a different kind of pet. They're scratching a different itch. Like there's no emotion that you can recognize on the face of a lizard.
Yeah, true.
Like the way a dog or even a cat can look back at you and like give you that sense of love. You just don't. I feel like they're too alien. Like you need something that's a mammal like yourself to really be able to like get an idea of it can have that emotion towards you. And you run through the list of animals, like how many animals would, say if all canines, all cats, all feline sort of species were wiped out, so that you can't even go and get a dingo or something and try and breed that into being a dog, what would you go for?
It's like a hamster and a gerbil. They're rodents, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, and plus they only live for like 2-3 years, so they're a bit pointless. Like you get attached to them and then they're just dead. Like straight up.
First of all, I thought sloths.
Yeah.
Breed sloths en masse. And sloths would be so relaxing. They'd be like fish. You know the way like you don't actually, there's not much maintenance. They just relax you and you just chill out with them. And the other one was koala bears.
Yeah, that'd be good, but I think you get a bit bored of them after a while, because they don't really do much. You know, the whole point of dogs is you get that companionship with dogs because you're always taking out for walks. True. They're always doing mad shit like jumping into lakes and doing stuff like that, and they just really love you. Like what would a sloth do? Like just go to sleep.
He'd just smile at you and you'd be like, you feel all warm inside. But saying that, one thing I wouldn't pick is a fucking ape.
Yeah, they rip you apart.
Oh my god, terrible choice, lads. You could see this coming a mile off. And that's what I liked as well in the opening sort of 30 minutes, is the dialogue actually I thought was awful in terms of building up the world. It was really just, you know, that just blatant exposition dialogue where it's like, the audience needs to know this information, so I'm just going to tell you, Caesar, for the next 5 minutes, even though you doesn't really fit in, and you probably would have assumedly already learnt this in life up to now.
Now listen to me, Caesar. There can be only one talking chimpanzee on Earth. The child of the two talking apes, Cornelius and Zira, who came to us years ago out of the future and were brutally murdered for fear that one very distant day, apes might dominate the human race.
But it's fine. You get away with it. But in terms of the actual just little seeds you see, like the fact that as they're walking through the city, which also never explains why they've come to the city, but again, it doesn't matter. They've come to the city, and as they're walking through the streets trying to go unnoticed, you see little seeds where you hear the tannoy announcer talking about there is a group of apes doing an unsolicited gathering in the foyer or blah blah blah, and you keep seeing police and armed units getting dispatched to break up these social gatherings of apes.
This is the watch commander. Disperse apes gathering in the mall. Repeat. Disperse apes gathering in the mall.
And a couple of other things where you can see apes already in their job starting to get angry. And you know there's a big feature of the film is the reconditioning center, where apes who are not behaving themselves, not taking orders, sometimes even acting out violently, are being sent to be reprogrammed, and which is basically, we go through it later, but it's fucked. Poor apes, man. And that's the thing about this film, the humans are dicks. Makes you hate. How did you feel about it? Were you rooting for the apes or for the people in this?
I guess I was rooting for the apes because I don't even like the whole premise of a zoo. Like I find it very like sad. You're paying money to like watch these graceful animals in just a 6-foot by 4-foot cage, and like all these like little kids are there with lollipops, and they're like, "Mummy, it's not doing anything. It's just in the corner like shivering," and you're like, this is bollocks, like, do you know what I mean?
It is sad.
Yeah, I was rooting for the apes, man. I always root for the underdog kind of thing, but
do you root, say, like in other movies where you're, like Avatar, where you're sort of rooting for things where you're supposed to root for another species and not the humans, which isn't that common in films. Even when the humans are the bad guys, I'm always just like, fuck them, like, I'm team human here.
Yeah, no.
But in this one, I really wasn't. In the later Planet of the Apes films, like the more recent ones, I root for the humans even when they're bad. And I think it's because the special effects are so much better.
Yeah.
Where it really feels like, and even the way the apes in the later ones attack the humans more like an ape would in real life, and there's more savagery to it. I think that makes me root against them. Whereas in this one, you know, I love the costumes and makeups from this era of Planet of the Apes films, but they're goofy looking. Like, they look ridiculous. It is a man in a suit. It's a man in a really good suit, but it's a man in a suit. And the way they attack, you know, it's that classic 70s, like, I sort of pretend to hit you a few times and then you're just covered in blood on the floor, and like, it sells it enough for the story for you to get behind it and get sucked in, but there's a safeness to it where I feel like I don't put myself in the shoes of the peril, because it just clearly is a movie.
Some of it I just found like downright comical. Like, I was coming back from Dortmund and like we had to get like 3 trains each, like 2 hours each, because the flight was just extortionate. And I looked it up. I was like, "You sent me the link for this." I was like, "I've never seen it." So I'll you know when you like put it into Google and it says watch film, I was like, where does it come from? And they have like every single Planet of the Apes film on Disney Plus. Yeah, like literally every single. I'm not sure about the newer ones, but definitely the older ones. So I thought, let me download this to like watch on the train journeys. I can easily just bang this out. And like, there was bits on the train where I was just bursting out laughing. Like, especially, I think there was one scene where, you know, they're in like a restaurant and they're like gorilla apes, like dressed in a little like red outfit with a little bell boy
and they're tipping him raisins.
Yeah.
The big one is in synthetic elements.
You're over tipping.
And like the woman's like, light my cigarette, and I was just like, I found it comical, but at the same time the newer ones, yeah, I've said very openly loads of times about my hate for like too much CGI. So you got to balance it up in the middle. Like, if there was a middle ground to it being less CGI but a bit more physically realistic with the costumes, I would have liked that. But
yeah. CGI where you don't know you're seeing CGI is the best use of CGI.
Basically, yeah.
But yeah, so they've come to the town, and pretty quickly Caesar gets himself into some trouble. I guess it's the first time he's seen the abuse that his kind take, and this one ape, I think he's getting taken to the reconditioning unit or somewhere by police, and he starts getting beaten up, and he screams out,
Lousy human bastards!
and straight away I feel like the police should be more shocked if they actually, because no apes in this world speak except for 2 famous speaking apes that came to Earth in the previous film. But they're kind of just like, I think that ape spoke.
Yeah.
Come on, ape, say something else. And they got that whole vibe to them, and it just felt like the acting or direction they got in that scene just didn't work. Like, it was just stupid.
Yeah, it should have been like, they slowly turned around and was like, but they just turn around and goes, "Did you say something?"
And maybe some like whispers murmuring through the crowds, like, that ape spoke. I think it was them.
No, this was another scene that cracked me up as well, because they were like poor little Armando was like, "It was me," and they were like, "Say it then." And he's got some fucking like Spanish voice, and it was like,
he sounds like the dog whisperer.
Caesar Chavez. Yeah, I'd be like, well, that clearly wasn't you, was it? Like,
he's like, you inhuman bastards.
Yeah. Now look, mister, you yell lousy human bastards.
Lousy human bastard.
We said yell.
Lousy human bastards!
Yeah, could be.
he didn't even try and put it on. But yeah, what I liked about this scene as well, do you know when you watch these films and you're like, they could never make this now? Like, because the woke brigade will be like, this is bullshit or whatever. Like, I did like the scene where, what I thought is, there would be a lot more protests in real life now, where they'd be like going around like, apes are like human too, and they deserve like blah blah blah. And they did kind of do this in this film, where the waiters were like protesting about all the monkeys taking their job, which I thought was pretty clever.
I love that as well, because you thought nowadays it'd be people protesting, being like, apes have rights, blah blah blah, and there would be a bit of that too, and it would have made sense if they put some of that in the film. But the fact that you had all these labour workers protesting about the fact that, and that's genius as well. Like, the world building in this film is perfect. You're like, yeah, that is what it'd be like. What would the economy be like? What would it do to like your average Joe who doesn't have a skilled job, or doesn't have like a qualified job, doesn't have a job that necessarily an ape couldn't do? Would they just be left on the wayside? And you can see all these things bubbling up. You can see that there's the tension with the humans as well as the apes building up, and you get a feeling even before Caesar starts getting in the mix that things are heading towards a big clash.
Because if you think about it now, like someone, Michael, who we went football with, made a good point. Like when we was in Germany, they had a Woolworths actually.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, like an old Woolworths. So I just went in to look because it's like a relic of like old times. And like, there's no self-checkouts anywhere. Like literally, it was like a conveyor belt, like an old like conveyor belt, and like staff doing it. And he said, I like this because I've always hated the self-checkouts for taking people's jobs. And like, because we're so used to it now, like no one even thinks of that.
You really don't.
But Declan, much like Planet of the Apes, technology fucks up, so you always have to have that one guy anyway.
Yeah.
And it's a bit like Planet of the Apes in this film where there was always one human like milling about if they fucked up to like sort it out.
No.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. In real life, not like apes are running around doing jobs, but I did hark back to like that self-checkout thing, and
Yeah.
like, they're getting more and more technological with everything.
Oh, they're
like,
gonna.
yeah.
There's actually a website you can go on. I don't know if it still exists, but back in the day, you could called the Robots Are Coming, and you could type in your profession or your industry, and it would give you a rough estimate of when you expect you'll be automated.
Because I did see someone that's moved to Dubai. I think it was Becky's sister Emma. She posted like this post, and it was like flying taxis will be coming to Dubai next year. So like for all the rich people, you can get like on Uber, just order a helicopter from like there to there. Like,
That is gangster.
yeah, I know. And I was like, mate, I know they have self-driving cars now. I read that one knocked someone over and killed them. I shouldn't
Yeah.
laugh, but yeah.
Speaking of helicopters, that's how old Caesar and Armando arrive in the city. So they've had that scuffle with the police. Caesar gets scared and runs off, and Armando has to run with him. So he hatches a plan because he's like, listen, now that you ran away, they're going to be really suspicious. So I'm going to go to the police, try and talk to them, be like it was me. I'll say you're lost and you just wait here. But if I don't, then go down to the docks where the new apes arrive from, Africa or Indonesia or Borneo or wherever, and pretend to be an ape coming into the city. Armando never ends up coming back because he's getting interrogated by the police, and we meet old Governor Breck, who was a top dick.
There's always something about in these 70s films. There's always like a henchman with a goatee beard, and like straight away you're like, this guy's gonna be a prick.
Yeah.
And so he was. Like, you know
Oh,
what I
that's his name, Culp, his little henchman
Yeah.
with the beard. Yeah, he's a massive dick, but Governor Breck is a top dick.
Yes, he is.
And we also meet then his assistant, MacDonald, a black character. And it's interesting with this because you kind of think with sci-fi films like this, where they clearly are exploring a theme or an issue, but using, say, like in this example, apes to substitute slavery that has gone on in history. But usually it goes under the surface. But having a black character actually vocally at times in the film talk about, no, I'm the ancestor of slaves.
I, a descendant of slaves, am asking you to show humanity.
He has the name MacDonald, which is clearly he would only get
slave name, yeah.
through getting a slave name. And it is interesting the fact that they had him actually vocally be talking about it at times, and it made him more grounded in the real world. So I really like that. But we meet all these important characters, and it becomes pretty clear to Armando and the audience that he's not getting out anytime soon, and they don't trust him. So we see Caesar have to go take his clothes off. He sneaks into a cage full of orangutans in order to sneak in. The only orangutans that you see really in the whole movie, actually, because this was the first one where there's no speaking parts for any orangutan characters. And I missed that because they were always my favourites throughout the Planet of the Apes films. Just something about their look, and maybe it's because I'm a redhead and like feel some kind of spirit animal thing with them. But they were always my favourite characters, like Dr. Zaius and stuff from the original one. Yeah, Dr. Zaius.
That's him
From The Simpsons.
yeah.
So I missed out on that. But he ends up going through the process of what it's like for an ape coming to this world, and he sees it through his eyes, just what they go through and how brutal it is. What did you think of the whole next sequence where he's going through the training program and getting zapped and beaten and given a name and all this?
Yeah, I don't know. They obviously had the electrocution stuff. My favourite torture method was try and get this banana in a ring of like a flamethrowers. And I was like, right, out of all the torture methods, you're going to do that? Like, you can never do that now with the price of petrol.
It's a bit on
Yeah. At one point in this sequence, do you know in it when they're like pushing them about and they like push like 3 of them into like a room with like rainbow coloured lights and they're all like, I thought it was going to break out into song for a second, and they were like, again, this film done a good job of selling how harsh it was in there in like brief sequences. So it did kind of hit the mark for me. I thought this is a bit fucking extreme. Like, it made me feel sorry for them, which I guess was its job. So it did it well.
It's also just great. Agree with all that. It's also just great visually. Like, there's a great use of colour in this film, and the fact that so much of it, I think it was filmed on an old university campus. Not an old one, sorry. A new one that had just been built. That era of like futuristic design had that sort of nearly communist Soviet Union, North Korea. Everything's grey, everything's economical, designed to the architecture. And everything's grey and whites and blacks. But then you have the apes in their jumpsuits, their coloured jumpsuits. I think it was red for the gorillas, green for the
Green
chimps.
for the chimps, yeah.
But then during the certain sequences, like the training sequences, you just have all these fluorescent colours and bright things and flashing lights and things that were supposed to be inducing to them, you know, the conditioning. But it just created this sort of psychedelic, trippy atmosphere and vibe to the movie.
Do you think they modelled like the policemen on the Gestapo? Because they had like all black uniforms. They was very like authoritarian. Like
The general police were clearly modelled on American police, I thought anyway. So then he goes through the auction house and he actually gets bought by Governor Breck. And this is, like you said, when he comes to get his name. And I love this scene. Firstly, it's a little bit humanising, so it's good writing. Even Governor Breck, you know, seemingly had a wife and he likes to keep a tradition that she made, which goes against his whole vibe. He is the personification in this movie of fuck apes. He hates apes. He thinks they're shit. He wants to keep his foot on their neck, keep them down, keep them as slaves. But he still honours that one little tradition his wife had of letting them choose their own name.
yeah, yeah.
A little bit of humanity towards them, even if he does it in a kind of sarky way. But the way, it's such a great secret win for Caesar, where he flips through, and this is when he first actually picks his name. To Governor Breck, as far as he knows, a complete accident. But it's a great little fuck you to be like, I'll be king one day,
I did
bitch.
like that, yeah.
So now we're going through the motions where he's getting more and more pissed and he's seeing the whole world as it is, and he's gone through what it's like to actually be an ape, and he's getting angrier and angrier. But he's not snapped yet. But we get to the scene where Armando dies, his owner, the man who's raised him and took care of him. And how funny was this sequence though when he dies, when he gets thrown out the window?
Yeah, so basically they make him like sign papers. Well, you see it in the end. He's going to sign it, and then they've got like a little machine that comes down. I assume that if it did follow through, that he signed the papers and it says Caesar is the talking ape, we're going to kill it, basically. And then...
Well, also, he'll be, I assume, then done for perjury.
Perjury.
Not perjury, the one where you lie in court, that is perjury, isn't it?
Yeah. I assumed that if the machine that was coming down, because he was asking what it does... I thought it was going to like either kill him or wipe his memory altogether.
No, so I think the machine was basically a lie detector.
Oh.
But I kind of, part of me thought, are they bluffing? Does this machine even work? Because he just spilled the beans first. But anyway, I guess he thought, oh, fuck it, they're out now, they're going to torture me to figure out where he's gone. So he throws himself out the window. Was it suicide? I think it was suicide.
Yeah, I guess he didn't want to give Caesar away, so he saw his best option as killing himself. But he literally, the window's there. And he jumps into it from like there. There's no way it would have broke. He just went.
Like up until the 80s, what was glass made of? Because it looked like you could just fucking walk
You
through
could
it.
just like literally, yeah.
Like in the movies from this era, like you would just like if you threw a baby at it, it would just
It's
immediately
like,
shatter.
do you know that Simpsons? We keep talking about Simpsons. That Simpsons episode where they go to Japan and like they got like those paper doors. He just walks through it, and I'm like, that's genius. Actually, like it's like that. But I found this following scene actually quite sad because Caesar's in like the main offices because they ranked the apes' jobs by intelligence, which I thought Caesar was making a bit of a mistake here because I assume that he's worked out that they're like still chasing him and they're looking to see if he's the one that talks. And there's a scene where showing people how to like wash their hands and get tissues, and like Caesar like just washes his hands, folds the paper nicely and puts it in a bin. Now if I was Caesar, I'd act like a total like idiot, so they don't suspect me of being the ape in question.
Good point, but also maybe it's great writing because maybe it says something about his character that there is an ego there.
Yeah,
Like he can't help himself. Like he doesn't want to just be like, oh look at me. Like you see other scenes where he's walking very normally with McDonald around, and you see even other apes are looking at him kind of like doing that sort of ape like what's going on there thing. And he starts then putting his shoulders down and sort of limping around in that ape-like gait. But I think you're right. I think he can't help himself, but like have his ego won't let him
act like an idiot, basically.
Be a dancing monkey for
Yeah.
humans. He ends up getting bought by Governor Breck, and he is given to his assistant, and they start developing a real relationship. Obviously, unbeknownst to McDonald, that he's a talking ape and he is a but he knows he's intelligent, and he just has that empathy. He can't control the world, he can't affect it to any greater, but he doesn't like the fact that apes are slaves. Doesn't agree with it at all. Has an ape slave though, but maybe that's just
I think they all have to have one.
Yeah, maybe you literally can't have one, or else people will be like, what the fuck.
But this scene where because he gets sent to like the main headquarters because he's seen as intelligence, but he's still put on like basic filing. But this scene where he overhears that Armando has essentially killed himself.
Was lying.
But they insist he fell to his death accidentally.
While trying to escape, he knew he'd been exposed.
I found this like really sad. The way he like went to the like roof and like you can actually see like the physical like tears rolling down his cheeks and stuff.
And it's the performance of Roddy McDowall. Like he is under so much rubber and latex. Really does he gives you every molecule of the emotion he's trying to convey comes through the mask. Like it is unbelievable. And I know the tear comes down, but even if the tear didn't come down, it's amazing. Like you know what he feels. And when the crying turns to screaming, this is the moment where he snaps and he just says, fuck it. Like, I am going to cause a revolution. This little segment of the scene is the only bit I actually thought was directed quite poorly, where you see apes start to act out a bit more. You know, one is polishing someone's shoe and it wipes it on his socks, and then another is, I don't know, like not lighting a woman's cigarette, and she's like, fucking Brutus, like my fan. But in every shot it will zoom out and you just see Caesar just sort of like behind a bush, like watching. Like
Caesar's on a roof like Batman, and like, it just zooms into his face and he just goes...
It'll just be like, it'll be like hiding behind a toaster, like staring at him.
But I did like this other aspect to it where they've got like their little basement headquarters in like... I assume it's in the conditioning place, like where it is, and then that they're slowly gathering like weapons and shit, and like some of them at this bit made me laugh as well. Some of them are like bringing massive knives, and someone just brings like a tea coaster, and they're like, that bit was good.
And like, you can see he doesn't get angry because he's like, oh, they can't help it, like they're stupid. But and I also like the fact that he can obviously read and write, so he's writing down, he's faking basically requests as if the chimps are being given to him, and getting like gasoline and getting guns and ordering ammo and all this. So it's building up to the big revolution.
Shipment 507I for Indonesia comprised 3 orangutans and 1 chimpanzee.
So?
There are no chimpanzees in Borneo.
So that sets off a red flag, and they figure out that obviously this is Caesar, the super intelligent chimp that's escaped. So they track him down, find him, bring him back, and they start torturing him because they want to hear him speak. They can't just shoot him because then like
They'll never know.
Yeah, the case ain't closed. He could still be out there somewhere. They could have it'd be like the old poor chimp in Blackpool that got hung for no reason.
Hartlepool.
But
blood wouldn't surprise me with Blackpool.
Yeah. It's probably happened. It just didn't get reported. They're electrocuting him. You know, he's turning a little dial and it's going up more and more and fucking zapping him. And he finally lets out one word of pity. Kind of reminded me of that scene in Braveheart a little bit, you know, where he's laid out the same way, getting tortured, and eventually screams. But
Pity.
That's incredible.
Oh, this was stupid actually. This because McDonald kind of like just sneaks off. Breck doesn't even bat an eyelid. Like, why didn't they lock the doors? You know that he sympathises with the ape. So it's like, where's he going for number one? So he goes in, like, and seemingly sneaks past like 10 guards with machine guns, and they're like, all right. And then he just sneaks into a room where all the control panels are, that for some reason isn't guarded. So the room, or locked. So the room with all the panels, and turns it off. So there's no power or current going to it, and they just turn it up, and Caesar just goes and like dies. Like, number one, if you've been electrocuted, there would be a lot of smoke coming from your body, which none of that happens. So they just assume he's dead. I just thought, you know, I guess what they're trying to do is like right, but it just looks very this whole sequence was stupid.
it's a slightly hokey way of getting out of it, but I always enjoyed it. It always just about got under the wire for me to not be stupid, though the film had built up enough credibility elsewhere. But anyway, so they all sneak out of the room. McDonald leaves. We forgot to say, actually, he's revealed to McDonald at this point that he can actually speak.
I understand, Mr. MacDonald.
Yeah.
And I like Governor Breck's reaction, where he's just like, he is like, he's nearly fascinated. Like, you can tell part of him doesn't even want to kill Caesar. He wants to study him, the fact that he can speak. But they all sneak out of the room. Caesar kills the guard and runs back to the little secret monkey
basement.
Monkey dungeon.
Bat cave.
Yeah, the
Monkey-
the monkey cave. He sneaks back there and he's like, it's fucking go time. And it all kicks off, man. The monkey revolution.
It's going back to that scene with him in shock, though. It really reminds me of, you know, in Austin Powers, where he's like, right, we're going to lower you into a tank of sharks with lasers on it. Scotty's just like, why don't you just shoot him right here, right now? And it's like, you've got guns right there. But yeah, I did like the whole from this sequence onwards, the whole revolution. I really did enjoy this. But what I did think, Declan, is if Caesar was that good at planning, what he should have done, they should have like put all the like really thick apes and like, you're gonna be at the front, and just them get mowed down as like little pawns while the other ones run about, which I guess they kind of did in a little way.
Well, they kind of did, but he was a proper lead from the front guy. Like, he was just out in the open. And I got to be honest, some of their tactics were a bit questionable. Yeah. Like, let's just lead these group of apes off to get shot by themselves.
Yeah.
But then they did have that, you know, they were doing things like they were sneaking up on him and throwing nets on him from above and beating the shit out of them. But then other points where, you know, when they've sort of won a couple of battles and they're crossing the big bridge, and this is kind of like their last defense, the humans' last defense, and they cross and they have that whole thing where they're going to light a line of gasoline.
Yeah.
And then they do it and it all goes up in flames. And you're looking at it like, they have guns. Yeah. You're the one who has to cover space to get to them. And now there's a big line of flame that's making you funnel into this tiny little one-way round the front. Like, how was that useful?
I thought if they was a bit more organised, what they could have done, this is all in hindsight, by the way, is kind of like scouted out where the area with all the guns were, isn't it? And like, I think they did do that and break into it and take them before the offensive.
No, they did, to be fair. Yeah. Well, I mean, they've been stealing guns, but what they do before this is they go to the reconditioning program.
Yeah.
Which is smart as well, because they're breaking out all the fucking apes who are already pissed and not taking orders and are ready to go. I love the scene, you know, where there's that one geezer with a flamethrower trying to survive, and then they end up knocking him over, and he sets on fire, and all the lights are going, and it's just great.
Yeah, I like the way that he's like facing forwards, and one of the apes like sneaks around and
Yeah.
like gets him. I thought that was quite clever, actually.
So anyway, the apes win that whole big battle, and Governor Breck and McDonald and the last survivors have gone off into the control room.
Yeah,
And they start using a blowtorch to get through the last door. And he's just pulling his hair out like, how could they have done this? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I love the fact that when they come through the door, you know, in other movies, it'd be like, oh, they're going to let the humans survive. And, you know, like Frodo in Lord of the Rings, you know, he'd be going around like, oh, you know, no, don't kill anyone we don't have to. Take him prisoner. Let's be nice. They're just like, fuck. They just come through and start massacring everyone. Except McDonald and except Governor Breck, but for very different reasons.
the whole thing with Governor Breck is like, this is your fault, like, because he does a load of monologues where he's like, I don't want the apes to take over. So he's kind of like foreshadowed this, like, it's kind of like idiot bimbo blonde in like a horror film. It's like, I'm just gonna go and sneak off into this room. It's like, you know this is gonna happen. So why are you doing it?
And there's still an ape curled up inside of every man. The beast that must be whipped into submission. The savage has to be shackled in chains. You are that beast, Caesar.
Well, it's the classic, the more you put your foot on the back of people's head, the harder they're going to fight.
Yeah,
Unless
yeah,
you
yeah.
literally just genocide them all. But if you want to oppress a group of people, it's never going to work in the long run.
I like the way that some of the apes who have guns, some of them are shooting them, and some of the others can't work it out, so they're just like hitting them. I did like there's little things in this film where you just pick up on how clever it actually is.
Yeah, 100%.
But they go in and they kill them all apart from Governor Breck, isn't it? So he gets captured, and what I thought was going to happen is Caesar was going to drag him to that little electronic table and like electrocute him to death. Like the taste of your own medicine, but that doesn't happen. And then the McDonald appeals to Caesar, and I like this specific choice of wording. Caesar, show some humanity. And then he goes on a whole...
He says, I was not born human.
I, a descendant of slaves, am asking you to show humanity.
But I was not born human.
He goes on this whole monologue of, did you show us any humanity? So I kind of like that.
Because, like you said before, there is some corny moments in this film. Maybe even some moments that were corny back when it was released, let alone now. But Roddy McDowall's performance in this final speech, like, I remember it just astounded me when I was a kid, and it still gives me shivers down the spine now.
In that smoke, from this day forward, my people will crouch and conspire and plot and plan for the inevitable day of man's downfall, the day when he finally and self-destructively turns his weapons against his own kind, the day of the writing in the sky, when your cities lie buried under radioactive rubble, when the sea is a dead sea and the land is a wasteland, out of which I will lead my people from their captivity, and we shall build our own cities in which there will be no place for humans except to serve our ends. And we shall found our own armies, our own religion, our own dynasty, and that day is upon you now!
So brilliantly written, so haunting, and the way he delivers it is just perfect, mixed in with the whole atmosphere of the scene, the visuals of all the darks and chimp faces and Rembrandt lighting and reds and yellows and the burning flames providing all the lighting and the different colours. And there's a big silence after he delivers his speech. No music comes in, which was a great choice. And then how you feel about this film would be very much on what ending you saw. The ending I saw as a kid, which was a TV edited version, because sometimes you get entirely different versions depending on when you watch it on TV in different countries. I never realised, but it wasn't the original ending that was shown in cinemas.
Okay.
And then when I was watching it this time, it was the first time I actually realised there was a different ending that was originally shown in cinemas. And it is the ending where basically all of a sudden you're only seeing close-ups from the eye profile with no mouth of Caesar as he speaks. Because they didn't film this, they came in and made him record voiceover, extra dialogue afterwards. And he's basically saying, but we're going to be nice to the humans because we're not the same, and maybe we can have a world of equality in the future, and all this, that, and the other.
If it is man's destiny to be dominated, it is God's will that he be dominated with compassion.
And it just ends like that, and you're like...
What was the other ending?
Well, the other ending, the proper ending, the original ending, the ending I saw, which is so much better, is after he says, and that time is now. He gives the order, and they brutally beat Governor Breck and the other policeman to death.
Okay.
Never shows if they kill MacDonald, but doesn't show him again, so I assume they actually did kill MacDonald as well. But it's also the goriest Planet of the Apes film in the original 5, because you are seeing guys, like, it would be an 18 today. You are seeing guys get their heads caved in by the gun butts and beaten to death by the apes, and having that come after that haunting speech, and then the music kicks in, you know, that kind of like over the top, like dun 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 dun. Music kicks in as you're seeing all these apes like jump up and down excited as there's flames going on. It fucking scared the shit out of me as a kid.
I can tell you that I definitely saw the less violent version, because the one that I watched on Disney Plus was rated 12.
Yeah, well, there you go.
So yeah. Well, now that you said that, I think I would have preferred the caving in heads, because I wanted to see Governor Breck get his comeuppance. But in my one that I saw, there's a whole scene where they've invaded the control room and they're about to like attack McDonald's, and like Caesar runs past and like no, and tells him to go. So I assume that McDonald just runs off and survives in this.
No, because then he's there for the next scene where he's trying to reason with.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Caesar.
Sorry, yep.
I think the point of that was that he knows not all humans are bad.
Yeah, and he explains that to Caesar.
But as far as he sees it, most of them are, and you can't be trusted. And fuck it, like I'm sure he'll feel bad about McDonald, but also just see him as like necessarily collateral damage.
I think Caesar would be clever enough to know that McDonald showed him mercy when he knew, he kind of judged McDonald's character, because otherwise he wouldn't have spoken to him, would he? He wouldn't have like revealed it. And then McDonald told him to go, so I think Caesar would have repaid that favour personally.
True, but this is a loop franchise where this is taking place before the first one, and we know what it's like for humans in that future world. So maybe to begin with, but ultimately this is just going to be a role reversal where maybe a few apes here and there feel bad about what's going on, but humans are slaves, they're lower class citizens, they're uneducated, and they're treated like shit. So it's not going to end up that way.
Because apparently, like, changing the subject a little bit, it's better if you watch Better Call Saul, you know, the whole thing before Breaking Bad.
Okay.
So we watch Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, and it makes a lot more sense. Do you know in which order? Is there any order to this, or are they just all unrelated?
So I'm going to only go with the original 5 here.
Yeah.
The order you would watch it in, if you were like watching it in historical chronological order of like when the story takes place.
Yeah, that's what
you would watch this one first.
Okay.
No, sorry. Do you know what? It gets confusing because technically you could watch Escape from Planet of the Apes first, but Escape from Planet of the Apes, they start off in the future and go back in time. So I'm going to say you actually watch this one first, then the next one, Battle of the Apes, which was the 5th in the series. Then you go back to the original Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Then that sequel, the second one, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then Escape from Planet of the Apes, which technically goes forward in time to go back in time to loop back around to before this first one. So it's arguable which one you could choose first, but I'd say it's between Conquest of the Planet of the Apes or Escape from the Planet of the Apes.
I might do that, just like watch them in that kind of order.
Yeah, that'd be fun,
see how it works out.
Now that we've started with this one, we could go in order now.
Yeah, because I guess that it wouldn't tie up completely, but it would make sense.
It'd be a fun way to watch it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that kind of timeline. It's like everyone Star Wars or bangs on about which Marvel films, how it works in order and stuff. So it'd be quite interesting to do that, actually.
So for you, who was the villain and hero in this film?
Well, the villain, I guess, to look at it would be Governor Breck, isn't it? Really, because he is the sadistic overseer kind of thing.
But isn't Caesar just going to repeat what's been done?
Yeah, that is the main point. Like, well, I guess that is the whole moral standpoint of the story. Like, we understand that you've been, you know, like, beaten down and all this, but, you know, it's kind of like the debate about the death penalty. Someone's killed someone, so you take his life. It's like a vicious circle. Like, unless you're gonna be like non-tyrannical and try and get to the negotiating table with the humans and get a middle ground to it, I guess Caesar is also a villain.
But how could they trust to live equally with humans?
Well, the only way to do it, Declan, would be to separate them into different encampments where the humans go about their business and the apes also have equal rights going about their own.
Alright, so Phil's pro-segregation.
Yeah.
Let's end it there. No,
no, but you get what I'm saying? Because if you mix both of them together, it's always going to be like, you get the really thick apes and the humans are going to be like, you stupid you stupid fuck, like, we're better than you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
So, I mean, if you look at it, he's both the hero and the villain, and it's also impossible for him to be anything in between.
But what you should do, Declan, in the power tunnels, so like, this is a world governed by politicians who are apes and politicians who are humans, not necessarily against each other like the Houses of Parliament where they're getting up like yeah like childish kids. There's power figures between both parties, and to come to agreements there has to be like signed paperwork where it works for everyone. And also the police force and the armies are a mixture of apes and humans, and that's how it would work.
There we go. It could have been done.
Yeah. So.
And on that bombshell, I take it you recommend the film?
Yeah, to be fair, never seen this one before. It's a really good film. It clocks in about an hour, and with the credits, about an hour and 20. So it's a breeze, and it was really good. Like, as I said, they do there's some questionable comical moments which necessarily aren't meant to be comical, but the way it sets it up, I really enjoyed it. It was very good and streamlined, the whole film. So I highly recommend it. Easy watch, actually.
Yeah, and I obviously recommend it. I love this film. It's my second favourite. I think it's the second best Planet of the Apes films, but it's probably actually my favourite of all the Planet of the Apes films, even over the original with Charlton Heston. It is fantastic, and please, if you're gonna watch it, find the original ending. If you can't find the original ending, watch the whole movie up to the last 5 minutes, and then go on YouTube where they have the original last 5 minutes of the ending and watch that instead, because it is absolutely beautiful and haunting and terrifying with the imagery, and Roddy McDowall's performance. It's just fucking incredible. But it is an absolute slap in the face when they turn around and do that stupid post-recorded extra dialogue where he talks about equality and all these dumb things. No, not that those bad things, but for the fact of the movie, it just kicks it in the dick right in the middle of its most powerful moment.
Yep.
So yeah, easy recommendation for Conquest of the Planet of the Apes.